One of my earliest memories is watching the news with my mother that happened to be on a cold November morning when I was 10 years old that President Spencer W. Kimball had passed away overnight. Since we lived in the Salt Lake City area, it was a big deal when the prophet died, and it obviously was the major source for the news coverage of that day. And I'll always remember how sad my mother was, but I didn't truly understand that feeling until several years later when President Ezra Taft Benson had died, and I was old enough to understand the loss of a prophet. Over the 30 years since then, I found myself studying this topic so that I can better understand it, but also so that I could teach it to my primary class who happened to be the same age that I was at that time. I've found it fascinating to compare the difference with how the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints selects a new prophet and how the Catholic Church selects their new pope. The traditions that surround the passing of a pope go back several hundred years, and over the years, those procedures have become church law. Once the Carmelino has certified that the pope has died, and once the death certificate is issued, the pope's bedroom and study are sealed until the new pope has been named and takes possession of those apartments. From this point until the new pope is named, the Carmelo actually does maintain the day-to-day affairs of the church. After a mourning period of 9 days, the funeral is held for the pope in the Vatican, and he is laid to rest at the crypt in St. Peters. Typically, it is not until the 15th day after the pope has died that all the cardinals of the church from around the world gather in conclave to determine who the new pope will be. The conclave is held in the Sistine Chapel, and in a series of votes, the cardinal who receives the highest number of those is named the new pope. A recent tradition has been to burn the ballots after each vote, and a special chemical is added upon the final vote, which turns the smoke white, indicating to the crowd gathered at St. Peter's Square that the new pope had been elected. And it's those faithful that wait for their first glimpse at their new spiritual leader. Like the very vast majority of popes, presidents of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints serve in that capacity for life. The president is assisted in directing the affairs of the church by two counselors, and the three men make up the first presidency. Organizationally, the Council of the 12 Apostles is below the first presidency, and traditionally, the counselors in the first presidency are called from the body of the 12. Once a prophet has died, his private secretary will notify the president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. Once that happens, the first presidency is dissolved, the counselors return to their place of seniority in that council, and they become the governing board of the church. While there is no set for days of mourning before a new prophet can be named, it is typically done after a funeral is held, which is done after the body of the prophet is laid in state in the Hall of the Prophets, which is located in the Conference Center on Temple Square in Salt Lake City. Interment is typically done in the Salt Lake City Cemetery. When he does feel it is appropriate after the funeral, the senior apostle, as the president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, will call that quorum together in a special meeting in their conference room on the fourth floor of the Salt Lake Temple, where he will motion that the first presidency be reorganized. And if that motion is agreed to by all members of the quorum, he will be named the new president of the church and will select his two counselors. This makes it a much simpler and easier way. It also provides stability in that we will always know who the next prophet will be. It also removes campaigning for office. The tradition of the senior apostle ascending to be the next prophet dates back to the earliest days of the church, when the church was first organized and President Joseph Smith had told Brigham Young, who was then president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, that he would be the next to lead the church. When Joseph Smith was martyred in June of 1844, there was actually a debate among the members of the church on the subject when Sidney Rigdon, who had been serving as first counselor in the first presidency, felt that due to that position, he should be the next president of the church. They held a large meeting, and both Brigham Young and Sidney Rigdon laid out their argument as to why they should be the next president of the church. According to several accounts, while Brigham spoke, many people saw and heard Joseph Smith speaking, which confirmed to them that the new prophet was to be Brigham Young. Unfortunately, due to the politics of the time and the persecution of the church, it was not for another 3 years until 1847 when Brigham Young was officially named as president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That line of succession of the next senior apostle being prophet has held until this day. One of the pictures that I have in my den is of Joseph Smith and the current prophet as a reminder to me of that success, that unbroken line of succession, and that the keys will always be here on the earth. And that concludes my talk. I hope that you found it informative. Thank you.